Okay, so last month we talked about John Norby giving talks at FOSDEM. Those talks are now online, so you can watch them. I've only had a chance to watch the first one, but it was really quite a good introduction to MicroPython. He then goes into a bit more detail about his EM-Learn library, so you can do machine learning at the edge with a MicroPython device. So yeah, and LWN, the Linux website, also had an article about it as well. So people are looking and listening to this stuff. It's pretty interesting work. One of the amazing things I saw in the past month is Tulip Web. So we've talked about. Can I actually look at the chat window as well? Yes. Tulip's a device that is hardware and software, and it's especially if you use for creative sort of stuff, particularly around music and MIDI control. But the Tulip team have actually released Tulip Web, and so basically you can do everything that you would normally do on the hardware, you can do in the browser. They've done this because they've compiled the MicroPython down using Emscripten to WASM, and then hosted it in the browser, and then have written some bridges across the MIDI devices, accessing that through the browser APIs. So this is really cool. They've got LVGL working in the browser, so all the toolkit is rendering the same way. Yeah, I thought this was a really impressive feat, really. We can have a look at perhaps later if we've got time.
So it's using that web serial to get to the device?
It doesn't use the device. It's actually running in the browser. So the software would normally be running on their hardware is now running in the browser itself. Yeah. And so all the hardware bits that they would normally connect to, like the audio out and the MIDI connections, they've routed that through the browser APIs. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Also pretty cool is Abe's Hacker Terminal. So Abe Haskin has released a video that got a fair bit of attention, where he's built himself a keyboard and a display, and this is all running MicroPython, or the Pymoroni version of MicroPython, because it's using their PicoVision. If you haven't come across the PicoVision, it's a small board that uses two RP2040s. It uses the second one as the GPU effectively, and it outputs HDMI using the PIOs. So he's got that as the guts of the device. Then he found a small keyboard from actually the back of a remote control, and then bought like a 800 by 480 HDMI display, and then some pretty neat 3D printing, and he's put this video together on how he built it and how it works. So the MicroPython code's all available. He's calling it Slime OS, which is basically just a launcher to run little MicroPython applications, and it's pretty clear how you could also extend that to write your own. There's kind of just hooks that get called when you click on them. But one impressive thing I wanted to highlight was he's got an extension port at the back. There's like 5 pins in this extension port, and depending on what board you plug into it, there's a resistor that gives you an analog change. So the device can figure out which of the extension boards is plugged in based on a voltage divider circuit, and then SlimeOS knows enough about that to pop up an icon on the display here that's specific for that extension. So I thought that was a really neat idea. So yeah, it's pretty cute, well worth a watch, and it's actually it's quite a funny video as well. The guy's got a good sense of humor. Okay, so Matt's hardware, I haven't written all of these up. One of them that I did was this React board, which is one of the first boards of the RP2350Bs that I can get my hands on. So the Bs are the ones that have extra GPIOs. So I wanted to get that just mostly for testing. They're pretty cheap too. Don't forget yeah, it's like $6 plus shipping. So 48 GPIOs, and they're all broken out with this board. So that was pretty cool. Another one that I haven't written up yet is another RP2040 board, but it's got USB-A on the outside. On the other side, that's connected to pins that can be controlled by the PIOs, so that we can test tiny USB in host mode. We can plug USB devices into it. That's something we would like to extend MicroPython to do. Apart from that, I've also gotten my hands on a couple of PSOC boards. These are from what's the company called now? Infineon. So yeah, Cypress Infineon now, because Infineon have actually posted a large PR to add PSOC support to MicroPython. So they were kind enough to send me out a couple of boards so we can test that. So I'm looking forward to doing just that. So if anyone's got any experience using PSOC boards, please reach out. I'd be curious to hear how you've gone with them. Okay, other hardware news. There's I think this one's actually been out for a little while. I don't think I've covered it, but there's an extension board for the Xiao pinout. So this one's an SX1262 LoRa board. I thought this one was pretty neat just because it's quite small. It's just really compact. Also cheap. They're $5 US. Have an external antenna. There's a couple of things announced for Xiao recently too. They're sort of expanding their peripherals that you can plug into this Xiao range of small little boards here. This one was an e-paper board, so technically it's just this little board here that you plug your Xiao into, and it gives you a 24-pin header. But Seed Studio, who make these, also sell quite a few e-paper. It's kind of theme of the day today, it seems. E-paper devices that you can plug into it. So yeah, if you're looking to get an e-paper, this is another option you've got. This board also has a breakout in the bottom too, so even if you're not using Xiao's, you can plug it in and it just has SPI breakout for any other board that you want to connect to it. $4 for that board, you can't go too wrong. I don't have a photo for this, but there was a super tiny RP2040 ESP32, and it's called Super Tiny, as a Kickstarter where they've got a display on the RP2040 and ESP32 boards. They're quite small. I will find that link before I publish. In other news, there's a bit going on in software and the community in general. One that I'd somehow missed, Dione Rosa had created the U data classes library. Now, I've been looking for, we've been looking at adding data classes to MicroPython for a little while, but thought it was going to add too much to the parser and the interpreter. Dione just added it with current MicroPython features. This is a Python library which gives you data classes support. And it works for MicroPython and CircuitPython. So MIT licensed. It looks like the bee's knees. I'm really happy to see this. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Another e-paper thing. What's going on, people? So M5 paper. This is a demo from Sam Whitford, whose wife got a job which had a number of international destinations that she had to work amongst. So he put together an e-paper device that had the times for all the places she needed to work at, and he's got the code available. So it looks like it's pretty easy to extend. We mentioned Peter Hinch before, but he's got a number of libraries which help with displaying widgets, not just a font library. And so recently he's announced this chess demo, which uses the Sunfish library, or more rather, it's last week we covered this. There was a Sunfish extension to Sunfish is a popular chess library, and someone ported it to MicroPython. So I ported a subset of it to MicroPython. And so Peter's bundled that chess library up and added his MicroPython Touch widget library to render all the chess pieces, and now you can play chess on MicroPython with the Sunfish library in the background. So that was pretty neat. You've got to have at least 320 by 240, otherwise the rendering can't fit. But apart from that, this should be pretty portable to any MicroPython board with support in the MicroPython Touch library. And someone asked, how does it work? Like, you actually just touch the square, like, so you touch your piece and touch where you want it to go. That's as simple as it is to use. This guy, Simon, talked about CrateDB. Simon, here's that link for your longer talk. Well worth a watch, particularly if you enjoyed what Simon had to say earlier. There was an article on DigiKey by a guy called Don Wiltshire, who published a comparison, or at least some of the obvious differences between MicroPython, Python, and CircuitPython. Probably worth paying attention to if you've got someone who always asks what those differences are. Fun with the Hub 75. So Phil Howard, who's from Pomeroni Gadgetoid, is his handle, and Mike Bell have both been experimenting with these Hub 75 LED matrices. You can buy them relatively cheaply for the density of LEDs. And Pomeroni have a device called the Interstate 75, or more recently the Interstate 75W, which uses an RP2350 to control these displays. And so they've been doing a few demos for them. So Phil's was to do, this is using Gaussian blur, which it's a bit hard to see there because it goes so quickly, but it's a really neat effect. And then Mike and then later Phil tidied up the code to do the fire. This is like the Doom fire sort of example. And actually, if I hit refresh, hopefully, let me see if that did refresh. Right, because there was another post here I had. One of the things I did to make this really fast was to use Viper, and so I think this point was well worth listening to, because yeah, as Phil says, like going from 5 frames a second to 50 frames a second with just a couple of lines of Viper code is pretty amazing. And when Mike saw this, he was also suitably impressed. That code is now part of the examples of the demos for that board, so you can go see that PR to see what code they've done and how much they had to tweak it to get the performance improvements. By the way, this was before they finished making performance improvements as well, so it's cranking along pretty fast now.
What's Viper?
Viper's it's a different way to get it. It's a different emitter, and so instead of parsing your Python code, you can decorate with type hints, and MicroPython can emit. Well, Damien, you should probably take it from here. You know more about this than me.
Yeah, you can. Well, you can write Python, but it's kind of like C semantics, and then the compiler can actually emit machine code, which is a lot faster than Python would be. It's kind of equivalent to C. So if you just do a simple for loop, adding some numbers and writing to some memory, it will be on par sort of with C, with the equivalent C code.
But you don't need to do a lot of changes. It's pretty neat. Yeah. There's also the native emitter as well, which can also generate some performance benefits. And there's also the, if you're on ARM, you can also have inline ARM statements as well. So they're all like a few optimization techniques we can use. Perhaps we should cover them one time. I'm going to jump back because this wasn't here before, but Oliver published his, some of you might have seen him playing with the joystick driver last month. So this is for the M5 stack joystick that you can purchase. It's quite a cheap joystick with an RGB LED there as well. So it's an I2C driver that's available on his website now, on his GitHub. MPy Tools is not the first VS Code extension I've seen that works in Visual Studio Code, but it is the first one I've seen, I think, that wraps up MP Remote, and so it bundles. It has a lot of the same functionality that MP Remote has in VS Code. So if you're using that editor, it'd probably be worth taking a look. I did mention the Presto last month, but I didn't show it running. I might have the ability to do so now, or not. I have a little dongle bit. Anyway, this is the Pomeroni Presto. It's a lovely device. I need a USB-C. Okay, it's worth it. Hopefully it works. Yeah, so lovely display. I think we covered the specs of this last week. I can't remember what resolution it is, but it's relatively high. It's also, might be hard to see, but there's a couple of, what is that, 7? There's a number of RGB LEDs in the back as well, so you can project colors at the back. So in this case, they're sort of matching the colored circles that are on the front of the display as they wiggle around. Really neat little device with a cute stand, great for displaying the weather or something like that if you don't want to use an e-display. Anyway, Bailey Townsend put together a breakout clone, I think it's using the Wii nunchuck. And so you can see that he's just using the nunchuck to move the paddle back and forth and bounce the balls around. So I'm hoping to get that running tonight. So stay tuned. Code's available now. Thanks, Bailey, for rushing to get that out for tonight. He's also Bailey's also experimenting with other games as well, including like 2D scrollers. So yeah, keep an eye on his Blue Sky account if that's of interest to you. We talked about the Pico SDK briefly before. I guess there's a few things that improves. It's only a minor release, but it's actually a pretty significant minor release, frankly. It's the big one, I guess, is the 200 megahertz clock support for RP2040, which is a big deal because it's only the RP2040 is 120 megahertz by default. So they've now certified it for 200 meg, which is a pretty big performance jump. And there's a PR with that Damien was alluding to before that he's been testing on. Luke Volder's put an article together on a talking dice project that he had using Raspberry Pi Pico, and it was outputting like wave files. He's got a wave file player that twiddles with PWM output. So there's a good write-up on that. And that's it for the main parts of the news. A couple of things not necessarily MicroPython related, but tangentially related at least. Chris Horsley had an article about his washing machine. So he had a problem with his washing machine that thought would be like a 10-minute fix, and ended up going back and forth to the hardware store and solving a whole bunch of problems along the way. Ended up being 4 or 5 hours. And he kind of just drew some obvious parallels to software estimation. So this one really resonated with me because it's like you can plan these things out, but something always throws a spanner in the works, and it's, I don't know, it was just interesting. And Antires also had a really interesting list of issues that he sees with software development. It's worth having a look. He thinks we're destroying software. That was the title of the article. It was designed to sort of be provocative. But yeah, there's quite a few things there that also resonated. And that is all I got for you, folks. I know